On this episode of This Week in Linux, we take a look at some distro news with Peppermint 19, Devuan 2.0, GeckoLinux based on openSUSE Elite 15, and we take a closer look at Linux Mint 19, which should be coming pretty soon. A new version of KDE Plasma was released with 5.13, and a major version for PulseAudio has been announced with 12.0. Then later in the show, we'll take a look at some interesting data from the Ubuntu Report first look at their desktop matrix, as well as a project to run wine applications inside of Flatpak. There may be a revolution on the horizon for IRC, thanks to London Trust Media, or the parent company of Private Internet Access, and also some really cool discounts and sales coming from Steam Summer Sale. They have some things all the way up to 95% off, so if you're into Linux gaming or looking to get into it, this is a perfect time to do that. As well as there's a Fanatical sale going on for the Red Hot sale. And then later in the show, we'll take a look at some CryptoMiner issues that Docker has been having for, well, quite a while. All that and much more coming up. I'm Michael Tennell with TuxDigital, and this is your source for Linux GNews. This episode is brought to you by the Linux is Everywhere t-shirt. It's the shirt I made to celebrate the proliferation of Linux. The concept of the design has Tux blended into the background to convey the message, even if you aren't aware that Linux is there, it probably is. The shirt is available for shipping from North America and from Europe. You can check it out by going to tuxdigital.com/LinuxIsEverywhere, or just go to tuxdigital.com/contribute to learn more. First up in the show is Peppermint 9. It was released this week. Peppermint 9 is based on the 1804 LTS code base, and they've done a lot of cool things that are mostly like iteration stuff. They're like in polish and improvements on various different things, so it's not like a massive change, but a lot of the things that they changed is very nice and especially for user experience and convenience. So one of the things that I was hoping that more distros would adopt is setting up Menu Libre to use, well, if it's GTK based, is especially to set up Menu Libre as a menu editor for their default structures for editing .desktop files. And because Menu Libre is fantastic, and if you haven't heard of it, it's a menu editor that allows you to change the titles, the icons, and things like that in the various menus of different desktop environments. You can find a link in the show notes for a video I made about Menu Libre if you'd like to. But anyway, it's really cool that they have now adopted it as a default, and they also fixed some quirks from the previous version of Peppermint that was why they didn't have it by default. So that's really cool. They've also made it so that you can use both the Mint software manager and the GNOME software manager, so that you can use the users that are used to doing the Mint software manager, and also ability to use snaps and Flatpaks through the GNOME software. So that is very cool, and I haven't actually tried Peppermint 9 yet, but I am going to immediately after the stream. So if you haven't tried it, be sure to do that, and you can check a link in the show notes. KDE released Plasma 5.13 recently, and there's a lot of cool features coming with Plasma 5.13. If you want to look at the video that we created, I participated and contributed to making the release video for Plasma 5.13, along with Chris Fisher of Jupiter Broadcasting. So if you haven't seen that, be sure to check that out in the links in the show notes. But to be more like, we're talking about what actually happened in Plasma 5.13. There's one of the coolest things is the browser integration feature. So it allows you to integrate the Plasma desktop with Firefox and Chromium, as well as things based on Chromium. So what's cool is that you can now have your downloads, like the percentage of your downloads display as a notification in your desktop. You can have media controls to manage and how you use like the audio or video playing in the tab. What's really cool about that is that it integrates with KDE Connect, so that you can have a YouTube video playing and then pause it and stop it, or cancel it or whatever with your phone via the KDE Connect drop-down notification options. Really awesome. I didn't really think I would be using it that much, and turns out I do. It's pretty cool. So other things that they added were improved Plasma media control plasmoids, so that you can now have a lot more players that work with it. And there's a lot of cool things that are coming with Plasma vaults, so that you can now there's better error reporting. There's now a better, more polished interface. They rebuilt a whole new backend with CryFS, which is pretty cool. And I don't know why, but I like the idea of making it there an ability to remotely open and close vaults with your phone via KDE Connect. I mean, that seems kind of unnecessary because you're usually opening it for security, so you should be there when you do it. But, it's a convenience, and why not, right? I like it. Anyway. Another cool thing about it is that they added this external monitor pop-up so that when you connect, the first time you connect a external monitor to a laptop or a desktop or whatever, so like just a new monitor from an already running system, it will pop up a thing to ask you where do you want to put that monitor. So you can just choose what orientation and location you want the monitor to go into. So if you want the monitor on your left or the right, you just click the icon and it automatically puts it there. So that is a very nice thing that it used to be kind of a difficult thing to deal with as far as adding new external monitors in Plasma. And back in the day, it used to be really bad in the sense that if you wanted to mirror your monitors, you had to like set the icon, the display things on top of each other. You'd have to know that you have to do that. And anyway, now you can just click the mirror button and that's it. So anyway, if you want to check out more, especially things I didn't talk about, like the improved lock screens and login screens, as well as the whole blur system that comes in KWin, which, by the way, really cool. I'm going to do some videos, like some demonstration videos about what's in Plasma 5.13 later on. So if you want to subscribe to the channel for that, and check out the link in the show notes for the rest of the announcement. Up next in the show is PulseAudio 12.0 was released, and there's a lot of improvements, including some more accurate latency reporting for AirPlay devices, better support for Bluetooth. Like there was an issue where headsets headsets can indicate that they support Bluetooth in two different ways, and PulseAudio only recognized one way prior to 12.0. So now 12.0 supports both of those types of headsets declarations. So now it'll work with pretty much all headsets, or hopefully. They also changed it so that there's the default output will choose HDMI output over SPDIF output. So if you're doing like external devices or things like that, it uses HDMI as a default now because HDMI is probably the most preferred method of most devices, and it just kind of makes sense. And 12.0 introduces that as the default. So that's really cool. And if you would like to know more about what happened in PulseAudio, or you would just like to complain about PulseAudio, you can check for a link in the show notes and leave a comment down below. Up next in the show, Will Cook posted a blog post on the Ubuntu blog about the first look at the desktop metrics or the Ubuntu Report data. So this is really interesting information because this is like they said that it's going to be in October or 1810 release schedules when they're going to make it a much more easier to use for everyone, so they can be like anybody can go look at the data at any time. So that's going to be really cool. But the other thing that they've already provided a little bit of information that's more than a little bit, but it's really interesting. So for example, the opt-in rate is 67%, which is pretty cool. And they said that it started to increase from that previous 67. They've also found they've broken it down into a lot of different things. So for example, there's 25% are from upgrades, which kind of makes sense because they technically haven't been. Those are people who want to do the upgrade, and they're more than likely probably going to want to do it anyway because they're going to probably choose to do the opt-in because doing an upgrade that quickly before Ubuntu actually promotes it, you have to manually do that. And in July, they're going to release 18.04.1, which will then prompt the user to upgrade to the new LTS from 1604. And well, if they were doing 1710, it would ask them then too. But anyway, the other thing is they've also seen that 90% of users are doing the auto update, so that's pretty cool. But one of the things is it's interesting is that over 50% of users are choosing to restricted add-ons, which kind of makes sense because I would assume more than that. I would say I would think the people who don't choose it likely don't know what they are or something like that. So I would say in my opinion, it'd probably be about 80% because I think every installation tutorial tells you to use it because there's it's better to do it. and 53% of users choose to erase the entire drive and install the system. That's interesting because I would assume that the majority would be like install alongside Windows, for example, but that's a very small percentage that actually does that. So anyway, if you'd like to check out the rest of the data, which there is quite a lot, you can find a link in the show notes. Up next in the show is Linux Mint 19 Tera beta released, and there's actually going to be fairly soon, sometime this month, more than likely. They announced that later in the month that they're going to release the full version. We don't have an exact date yet, but it's pretty soon. So I wanted to talk about the things that are coming in this release. So Linux Mint 19 is going to be based on 1804 LTS, so it will have a support basically the same support cycle of the 5 years. They've decided to change a lot of things. Like a lot of cool things are being added, and some other things are being removed that I didn't really like in the past, so that's really cool. So start off, we're going to talk about the brand new welcome screen. So the welcome screen has a lot of interesting changes to it so that you can now do certain steps inside of the welcome screen and get documentation and things like that. The old welcome screen was kind of lacking. It was a little lacking. So I'm glad to see that they've put some effort into a new welcome screen. It's pretty cool. So next up is they've decided to revamp the software manager, and they've added support for Flatpak. They did that in the previous version of 18.3, but this one has many improvements to that. One of the things that they did was create this internal cache system and an abstraction layer or basically the cache system is an abstraction layer, which allows them to use apt and Flatpak syntaxes and stuff like that to work in the same method, the same way that everything is handled on the back end for the software manager, but still utilize the default structures that each one of them do. So they've kind of like built a buffer layer between the two. Not between the two, but like so that the software manager can use both of them without having to change anything of itself. The other thing they did was they've changed. One of the things I didn't like about Linux Mint was some security issues that they did with the update manager. So previously, the update manager had a value system of whether the severity of how important it is, like it's a critical update or a regular app update or something like that. And it confused people to think that, well, actually, no, they specifically said don't typically install these updates because they might break your system and stuff like that. But most of those updates that they were blocking from people to use were important security updates, which created this really big breakpoint of my opinion of the distro. But thankfully, this new version of the update manager no longer does that selective updating, and they've changed it to now use timeshift as a kind of a backup snapshot approach, so that when you update something, it'll apply all of the security updates and everything. And if anything goes wrong, you can use timeshift to go back. I don't know if it automatically goes back if it detects a problem or not, but either way, it's really cool that you can do that. So while I would prefer them to fix the breakpoints of the packaging that creates this issue in the first place, I'd like the fact that they're making a workaround, so that's really cool, and I very much appreciate that. They've also added the Cinnamon 3.8 to the next release, as well as Mate 1.20. And if you'd like to learn more about those particular DE updates, you can find a link in the show notes. Cinnamon 3.8 was talked about in This Week in Linux episode 28, and Mate 1.20 was episode 20. So you can find a link to those in the show notes. And I can't wait to try this out. I'm definitely going to try this out, and I'm probably going to make a specific video to demonstrate certain things about Mint that I'm looking forward to. So Linux Mint 19 beta. Up next in the show is Purism Librem 5 announced that they're going to do a secondary processor structure in order to qualify for the Free Software Foundation's Respects Your Freedom hardware endorsement. So in order to do certain things, they need binary blobs to accomplish these things. And when you use a binary blob, the FSF and the Free Software Foundation, the free software culture doesn't recognize that as a valuable or a viable method of hardware. So like they wanted to be classified as free software certified sort of thing. And the only way to do that they found, or I don't know if that's the only way, but the solution they found was a secondary processor exclusion, so that the main processor that handles all the software and all the user interaction stuff is separated from the binary blobs. So the binary blobs will be using a completely different secondary processor, which I think it's the M4 ARM processor, and the iMX8 is the main processor for the device. So this should keep the processor cores of the A53 processor to be clean so that the Free Software Foundation standards will be applicable and they can get like the endorsement. So that's kind of interesting that they're going to have to do this kind of thing. So I don't know if it's like they're calling it a hurdle. I don't know if it's like a big hurdle or a big obstacle, but hopefully they get this solved, and hopefully it's still on time. So far it seems to be, but there's some community arguments whether or not that they will be on time, and they make sense, based on the support for the processor they're going to be using. So I can't wait to see it, and I definitely want to try it. As far as I think this is one of the only mobile devices that I am even remotely interested in. There's this new whole ridiculous fad in mobile devices for the notch system. And then there's all these other ones like the Oppo Find X, I think, where they want to have these. They don't want to have a notch, but they want this full screen display on the device with no bezels or as little bezel as possible. So they have this weird motorized thing where the camera pops out of the top. And after 6 months, that motor's going to just completely break, and you'll have no ability to use your camera. So that doesn't seem like a very good idea. And they also made it so the back camera is also attached to that thing, so you can't even use the back camera. I get it maybe if it's the front camera, which has a reason to be away from the display, but the back camera is kind of... Anyway, I'm looking forward to the Librem 5, and I'm looking forward to sane, reasonable structure of a phone. That'd be nice. The Winepak project was announced recently, and this is a really, really interesting project. So it's essentially like a Flatpak for Microsoft Windows applications via Wine, which I really just read off the website. But that's essentially what it is. But what's really cool about it is that the Flatpak applications include a pre-configured Wine so that you can use Windows applications without much of a hassle. Now, there are certain cases where some of the applications need you to deal with wine trick sort of stuff. But what's really cool is that when you perform the wine trick modifications, it will save it. Well, it should save the compatibility for that particular Flatpak or Winepak or whatever. So the Winepak repository is available, and it's very similar to how FlatHub is. So you can add this as a remote for a Flatpak remote, so that you can install stuff directly from their repo. And included in that is Overwatch, World of Warcraft, StarCraft 2, Fortnite, and some other things. So lots of games, obviously, is one of the biggest things that are going to come into that. But there's also other applications. For some reason, if you would like to run Internet Explorer 8 on your Linux system, you can with that. So anyway, really cool idea. I'm glad to see this happening, and I look forward to playing with all these, hopefully playing with these games, and it'd be really nice to test and see if they work well, and if they do, might do some streaming with them or something. You never know. So check the link to their video in the video description for Winepak project for the Winepak repo. Up next in the show is breaking news. No one has remotely covered this at all. This is so new to everyone. Microsoft has purchased GitHub. So if it actually is new to you, I'll go ahead and tell you the basics. But so Microsoft decided to purchase GitHub for $7.5 billion. And that is true, but it's more it's also stock values and stuff like that. So it's not like they gave them $7. So a lot of people are bothered by this news because they're looking at GitHub as an open source, not really open source, but as a ecosystem that stores a lot of open source code, and because it was independent, they felt like they were more trustworthy. Even though the software and the servers and everything that makes GitHub is proprietary, them storing the open source code makes it easier. Makes Microsoft controlling that ecosystem is potentially bothersome to people. completely understandable considering the history of Microsoft has been awful, where they just completely attacked open source and Linux and everything as much as they could, to the point of even calling it cancer. But at one point, those people who were involved with Microsoft that had that opinion are no longer there, which was like 2014. And the new head of Microsoft is more open to the idea of open source and sharing and all that other stuff. It's still like, I mean, I'm cautiously optimistic. I don't really trust Microsoft, of course, because they've proven themselves over decades that they're not really trustable. But after looking at the potentials of the other companies that could have purchased GitHub, which the multiples were trying, including Google and Oracle, both of which would be absolutely terrible, I guess you can kind of say that Microsoft is slightly less terrible than those. I don't know. I'm not, as far as like open source code goes, I don't really think it matters because there's other options like GitLab and Git and all these other things. You can self-host it. You can use these other services like Bitbucket and etc. So as far as like where you host your code, it does not really matter, because especially if it's open source and open licensed, it doesn't really matter that much because you can put it wherever you want. And if they decide to take your code and fork it and make their own thing with your code, I mean, that's what it was designed to do in the first place. So that's like, it doesn't really matter. So I don't really see what, like, they could in a couple years, maybe after 2 or 3 years, implement some changes that would be problematic for the community. That's possible. But right now, it's more than likely they're not going to do anything for at least a little while. But you never know. Some point in the future, they might do something that's ridiculous. But as far as open source code goes, you can transfer that wherever you want it to do. As long as it has Git, you're fine. And considering GitHub doesn't own Git, it doesn't really matter if Microsoft buys GitHub in the grand scheme of things. So it's problematic. I'm not really. I'm skeptical, but I'm also not dismissive of it. I'm interested to see what happens. I'm more. The thing that makes me more cautious is not really them purchasing GitHub. Is by purchasing GitHub, they also purchase the Atom text editor, and also, not as important, but more importantly, is Electron. So GitHub created the Electron framework, and now Microsoft owns the Electron framework. And technically it is open source, but they are now in control of the overall framework. So yes, you could take it and make another one, but it's still, that's the only thing that would make me cautious about it. So I'm curious to see what happens, and let me know what you think in the comments below. Google announced their VR 180 creator tool, which makes it easier to edit VR video or virtual reality video on Linux. They released the VR 180 creator on Mac and Linux, but interesting enough, it apparently was not released on Windows. So I'm not sure if that means they're not going to do that ever, or when they plan to do it, and they probably will do it based, odds are they probably will eventually release it for Windows. But it's really cool to see that for now Linux has a higher priority for this release. That's pretty cool, and it allows you to edit virtual VR video and convert it to VR friendly formats and things like that. If you are in the space of wanting to make VR content, it's really nice that you can now do that with Linux. So if you want to check out some more information about that, you can find a link in the show notes. There was a 35-year anniversary of the GIF format, that is GIF with a G, and Google decided to announce a new piece of software that allows you to convert a GIF into ASCII art or other kinds of command line interface image animation stuff. So this is kind of cool in the why would they make this is ridiculous kind of way. But you can take it and make this kind of setup. Why would you want to do that? I don't know. It's still kind of cool. So anyway, if you're interested in that, you check out a link in the show notes for that, the GIF to CLI tool. Speaking of GIFs, there's an open source video to GIF maker now called Gifcurry. And Gifcurry is actually pretty cool in the sense that it allows you to take the videos that you have, turn them into GIFs, and then you could use the GIF to CLI to make the ASCII GIFs if you'd like to do that. This is a really interesting tool because it's not just, hey, make a video, turn it into a GIF. It allows you to crop the video, trim it, like go seek to a specific section of the video, add text, add custom font text and all kinds of stuff. You can change how like the size of the video, the quality for your for the rendering, like all kinds of stuff. It's actually pretty cool as far as like the power and flexibility that it gives you to do something that seemingly is pretty simple, but allows you to do a lot of extra stuff to make it even better. And it also allows you to use a preview screen to see what your changes are doing to the output, the end result. So if you're interested in checking it out, there is an app image and a snap for Gifcurry, so you can find a link to those in the show notes below. Next up in the show is Timekpr Revived. Now, they had a release a couple weeks ago, so it's not exactly this week, but this is a really cool piece of software that might be useful to a lot of people, or some people at least. What it does is allow you to create kind of like a parental control approach to users for like your kids and stuff like that. So you can limit the amount of time that someone can use the computer as the user, like a particular user on the device. So if you set up users for each of your kids, you can say that they can only use the computer during a certain amount of time, or for a certain duration of time and things like that. It allows you to configure that sort of thing on even on a per day usage sort of thing. So it's a really cool piece of software that just had a new update. So if you're interested, check it out. So far it works on pretty much all DEs, and they made an update for KDE Plasma 5 that fixed some of that. So that's pretty good. And if you're interested in checking that out, let me know. I mean, I want to see if there's anybody who would be interested in this kind of thing. Just let me know in the comments below. And if you do check it out, let me know what you think as well. Check out the show notes for the link to Timekpr Revived. We got some really good news for the PeerTube project. If you haven't heard of PeerTube, it's a federated video platform similar to YouTube, but is more like a peer-to-peer crowdsourced platform. And they asked for 20,000 euros, and they've actually surpassed that. So they've actually, at this moment, they've got 21,575, which there's still 12 days left to get more if there's people who are looking to help them do like their stretch goals and things like that. But PeerTube is a free and federated video platform, and it's a Libra licensed system. And what's really cool about it is that the federated system allows for a wider audience of videos than hosting your own instance or solution for it, in general, because it allows you to connect your instance with other instances inside of the federation. They do this by using a peer-to-peer streaming structure via WebTorrent, so that if you can have files on your computer or on a server, and then other people could connect to those files and have pieces of those files and share it, so that when someone watches a video, they're not necessarily taking the video from the host server. They could be sharing it to a wide variety of people. So it's an interesting idea. And they've also talked about when they announced the first version coming by getting this goal of the 100% gold. They made an update saying that version 1 will be coming in October 2018. And it's going to have the federation system built into it. It's going to have the peer-to-peer streaming part. It's going to have interface localization for a variety of languages, video subtitles, RSS feed system, video importing, which is probably the coolest thing. Well, they're all really cool, but like a convenience part of cool is the importing thing, because it allows you to take YouTube videos, Vimeo, and Dailymotion videos and others, or a torrent file, and import it into the system, and it will just automatically pull it into your instance or an instance that you're using. So that's pretty awesome. If you want to check out more about PeerTube, you can check out the link in the show notes. And if you want to, contribute to or back the project, the crowdfunding. I never heard of this crowdfunding platform until I saw this PeerTube project doing it, and I like the name because of how ridiculous it is. But you can find their crowdfunding campaign at kisskissbankbank.com. Okay. Sure. Up next on the show is Fedora CoreOS was announced, and the leader of the Fedora project, Matthew Miller, said on this blog post that they want the CoreOS user experience to retain for the CoreOS system, so that you can have the fully container cluster hosted OS kind of thing. They want to have like so you can have it up to date itself and things like that. They want to keep that functionality. So the first question is, what's going to happen to Fedora Atomic Host if Fedora CoreOS becomes a thing? And he answered that he expects with over the next year or so that they will be replacing Container Linux and Project Atomic with some kind of combination of the two, of Fedora Atomic and the Container Linux structure, which would then create Fedora CoreOS. Now, this would kind of be like an upstream testing bed for Red Hat CoreOS, which they announced a couple weeks ago, or like a week ago, anyway. So when I first heard that Red Hat CoreOS was announced, I was hoping maybe they make a Fedora CoreOS. And the only reason I care that they did this is because Fedora, if you're not aware, used to be called Fedora Core. So like the main offering for Fedora as an ISO or download was called Fedora Core, like Fedora Core 6 and stuff like that. So I just think it's fun that they now, by Red Hat purchasing CoreOS and then making a project, we're using CoreOS, now we get back Fedora Core. So sort of. Not exactly. It's not the same thing at all, but I like it. Anyway, if you want to learn more, you can check the link in the show notes. Up next in the show, we got a new release for Devuan, the GNU/Linux operating system that is based on Debian, but chooses to provide a different init system than systemd that Debian uses. So Devuan 2.0, or ASCII, which is fairly convenient for the other topics we talked about earlier in the show. Anyway, so this is a new release for 2.0 for about a year after the first release of 1.0, and Devuan 2.0 is based, I think it is. It's hard to find the documentation in some places. Maybe I didn't look in the right spot. I don't know. But I'm pretty sure it's Debian Stretch is what it's based on. And it allows you to use sysvinit or OpenRC init systems instead of systemd. This is like the first year. This is the first full big release of Devuan since the previous release last year, when they released 1.0. Now, the interesting thing about this one is that 1.0 was based on Debian 8, or Jessie, and this is based on Debian 9 Stretch. So while it's a year out of date, it's way better than their previous release, which was very much out of date. So I'm glad that they're making, fairly good progress as far as like getting, catching up to the Debian releases. So hopefully in the next release of 3.0, they will be somewhere along the lines of like, roughly the same. That'd be nice to see. But anyway, if you don't like systemd for some reason, then you might want to check out Devuan 2.0 ASCII. GeckoLinux announced their newest version of their distro based on openSUSE Leap 15. So GeckoLinux is a derivative of openSUSE. If you haven't heard of it before, it tries to do like an offer more polished user experience with like niceties, including additional repositories, modifying designs of different like themes and stuff like that, and having additional software included by default. Things sort of like that makes just using the system easier. So it's kind of like what Aurora was to Fedora. That's kind of like the same thing. So it gives an extra polished, like nicer experience. So if you're interested in checking out openSUSE and you have like if you try to openSUSE and it has like doesn't work for you, maybe give GeckoLinux a try if you want to have something that's based on openSUSE or something like that. So feel free to check that out. But GeckoLinux has a static and a rolling version of their system. The rolling version is obviously based on Tumbleweed from openSUSE, and the GeckoLinux static is based on Leap 15. So there's a lot of cool things that that Leap 15 brought in. We talked about that on a previous episode, so if you want to check out that's episode 29, pretty sure. And also, there's a kind of a weird, confusing thing on this website. So when you go to their website, the notes that the Gecko static editions are based on openSUSE Leap 42.3. I checked it and can confirm that it is based on Leap 15 and not 42. Now, you also might be wondering, why 42 rather than, why is it 15 now if it was 42, or what is going on? openSUSE decided to do a weird versioning scheme when they made the Leap system. So it used to be openSUSE 13, 11, 12, 13. And then instead of making 14 or Leap 14, they made it 42. So it was Leap 42. And then they decided to go back. So technically 42 is really 14. Or anyway, so now it's Leap 15. GeckoLinux is using Leap 15. So there you go. Maybe in the future they won't do that again. Or openSUSE won't do that again. Change the numbering scheme for one release. Anyway, if you're interested, check out GeckoLinux. There's a link in the show notes, and let me know what you think, because it's, if it's designed for an easier user experience, and I want to know if you agree that it does provide a better user experience. So let me know in the comments below. Up next in the show is some really interesting news and really cool from the London Trust Media Company, which owns private internet access. So effectively, it's private internet access that are doing it. It's essentially. But what they're doing is like an IRC revolution. I mean, they're taking so many things that are IRC related and just making it so much better. They're supporting it. They're purchasing it in some cases. They've decided to purchase IRC.com. So they're going to make. I'm not really sure exactly what this is for, but they say it's going to be a professional friendly network for huge communities. Okay, they've already been working for as far as working on Kiwi IRC and WeChat, as in providing money for sponsorships. And they purchased Freenode and SNUnet IRC networks. They've also supported other networks as well. They're very much into IRC, so it's really interesting to see what's happening with this. And they're going to do some other things that are pretty interesting. One is really cool. The IRC University that they're going to make is an education, a free education for learning IRC and things like that. And they're actually asking for people who would like to teach things about IRC to email them if you want to. They are doing something that's what now? They're doing IRC gaming. They announced this too, and they didn't really describe what it is, but they said that they're going to have cash prizes for various different types of gaming things through IRC, to the point where they said that they're literally going to give away hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash prizes. And what now? So I'm totally interested to see what happens with this, because this is definitely on the scale of revolution for IRC, because IRC is kind of started to fall back to kind of where it used to be for core projects using it and open source projects using it and things like that. But then things like Slack and Mattermost and Matrix and Riot and things like that are taking over, or Microsoft Teams or whatever. Those things are were taking away most of what IRC was good for. But one of the things that is really awesome about there's some really interesting things like the IRC gaming thing and the IRC ventures, where they're doing incubation stuff, venture capitalism stuff on IRC, whatever that means, I don't know. But what's really cool, and I don't know how far this goes, but the way they describe it is kind of amazing, because one of the biggest things that it's wrong with IRC as far as usability goes, especially if you're getting new people to use it, is the logs or the lack of logs, the lack of history for conversation. So if you're not there right at the time of that conversation, you miss the conversation. So it'd be really cool if you could do a history system and be able to see what you missed by logging into a system that is always there. Now, there's things called IRC bouncers, and they basically do the exact thing that I'm referring to, that allow you to have a server install a bouncer, and that bouncer connects to all these IRC networks, and then you connect to the bouncer. So the bouncer is on the server, which then connects to these other servers, and they're always online and always connected, so you don't have to be. So the history is there and completely fine. Now, the problem with that is IRC bouncers are pretty difficult to set up for most people, and even if you are experienced with IRC, it still can be kind of a pain to set it up. But they're saying that they're going to provide an IRC bouncer that will support all IRC networks, and they're going to keep it open sourced, and you'll have always on connectivity. So they will provide the bouncer, and you just connect to it and use it whenever you want to. That's game changing, revolution style. That's why I named. They don't ever say the word revolution in their announcement, but that's why I'm calling it that, because it has a potential to change a lot of usage for IRC. So this is really cool to see, especially stuff like Kiwi IRC. If you could use Kiwi IRC to have a web-based thing that you connect to a bouncer and all this other stuff, you could have so much potential for this this new project. So I'm looking forward to see what happens. And yeah, if you want to learn more, you can go to irc.com and read the blog post or the announcement from the London Trust Media Group. So, yeah. Up next in the show is from really good news of the IRC revolution to not very good news. I mean, technically it's good because they finally solved it, but the fact that it took so long is, Anyway, so Docker has had some crypto mining issues with a crypto mining botnet. And the problem with it is not necessarily that this happened. It's the fact that the way the Docker Hub addressed it or took forever to address it. So you may remember a couple weeks ago or a couple episodes ago that there was a news about a crypto miner being found in a Canonical Snap store. So a couple snaps had a crypto miner attached to it, and within about a week, it was detected and found, and then reported. And within about an hour of the report, it was removed, and they fixed the problem very, very quickly. Now, Docker did not do that, so they finally have fixed the problem and removed these malicious images, and there were about 17 of them. And it took them 10 months to do it. There was a bug report posted on their GitHub issues. It can describing what it was doing, showing where what crypto mining it was doing, even what cryptocurrency it was mining for, and you could actually track all the mining that it was doing and find out how many coins of that particular currency they were getting. So they knew what was going on. They knew it was there, and they still ignored it for almost a year. That's a good sign of why Docker is losing popularity at this point, because some Docker images are not being updated, some Docker images are being abandoned and still available for users and things like that. And then you have things like this where they know for almost a year and still do nothing. It doesn't really convey a good message, in my opinion. But hey, anyway, so if you're interested, the people who put the mining stuff in those images were able to get 549 Monero digital coins, which approximately were worth about $90,000. So I guess it was good for them, not good for the Docker ecosystem in any way whatsoever. So if you're interested in trying out Docker, maybe consider looking at another option, or at least make sure it's up to date and try your best to find out if it has a crypto miner on it or not. Up next in the show is the Steam Summer Sale is active. Also, there's a Fanatical sale as well, so you can check that out too. But let's talk about first the Linux, the games on sale for TuxDigital.com. So you can go to TuxDigital.com, and if you go to the website, the official TuxDigital website, and you click here, it says Linux Games on Sale. That'll take you to TuxDigital.com/games on sale. And this is a quick, easy access to get to various different parts of gaming sales for various, different platforms that provide, purchasing of games. So Steam, for example, Humble Bundle, Fanatical, GOG, Feral, itch.io, Itch.io? I'm not sure how that's supposed to be said. But anyway, to be clear, the Humble Bundle links and the Fanatical links are affiliate links. So if you purchase something through those stores, I will get a commission, or TuxDigital specifically will get a commission for that purchase. But anyway, moving on, I wanted to talk about the Steam Summer Sale that's going on. So, first, before I forget, the reason why I made this games on sale thing is because there's a variety of different things about these platforms that you can go to, and it's kind of complicated because their search engines are all different, and it's kind of weird how you get to the specifically only stuff on sale and specifically only Linux things. So each one of these things have their Linux, their store search pre-filtered for Linux gaming. So if you click the link for the Steam sale, it will take you to showing you only games that are on sale that are running Linux, that are runnable on Linux. So I think this is quite useful. You might as well. So feel free to check out the link in the show notes for the TuxDigital.com/games on sale or TuxDigital.com/Steam sale, whatever. But so the summer sale for Steam is going on right now, and there's a lot of cool things that are available that you might want to check out if you are into gaming, of course. First of all, we have 50% off Rocket League. So you can get Rocket League for $9.99. This is one of my favorite games. If you've never watched the show before, you might not know that, but I really like this game. So really cool that you can get it for pretty cheap now in comparison to its normal $20. So if you're interested in that, check that out. But also recently, I've been checking out a new game called Ballistic Overkill, which is like a first-person shooter, running gun type shooter game. It also has sniper stuff like that. Well, if you ever heard of Overwatch, it's kind of like Overwatch meets CS:GO or Counter-Strike, and it's a really fun game. And you can get it in the Steam Summer Sale for $5.99 or $6, which is 50% off of the normal price. So if you haven't played this before and you want to check it out, I think it's a really fantastic game. It's super fun. And if you want to, you can definitely play with me, and can just join the TuxDigital.com/Discord or TuxDigital.com/Telegram, and hit me up and ask if you want to play it, because I've been playing this game quite a bit lately. So anyway, Ballistic Overkill, really cool. Also, speaking of Counter-Strike, Counter-Strike is on sale, but also the Valve Complete Pack is on sale. Now, if you haven't ever heard of this, the Valve Complete Pack allows you to buy a bunch of Valve games pretty cheap. Normal price is $200. So no on that. But the Valve Complete Pack during the Steam Summer Sale is only $15.25, because you get to save 92% for some reason. But anyway, that's awesome. Counter-Strike Global Offensive, or CS:GO, normally is $15. So basically, you're paying the price for one game and getting all these other games. So if you ever want to play Half-Life or Portal 2, Left 4 Dead 2, etc., then there's, plenty to get. Team Fortress, Team Fortress 2 in here? Oh, wait, no, Team Fortress 2 is free. Never mind. So that's, whatever. You should definitely check this out if you're interested in getting one of these games. Now, one thing I want to point out, that if you use the Steam sale from TuxDigital.com, you won't be able to get the Valve Complete Pack from that link, because for some reason it says that it doesn't support Linux. Yet only one game in the pack doesn't support Linux. So it breaks the search, and Left 4 Dead is the first one that's the reason why it doesn't show it. I don't know why that is, but I guess if any of the games don't work on it, the whole pack doesn't considered working. I don't know. So I'm going to leave a separate link for that in the show notes. So if you're interested in that, look for that. The Steam Link is also on sale for 95% off. Now this is interesting because it allows you to play games on your on your TV while you're technically your computer is powering the game, but it sends it through your internet or your local internet or local LAN basically to display it on your TV. And it's pretty cool idea, and the price now is super ridiculous of $2.50. I don't know if that includes shipping or not, but that's super, super cheap. Delivery delays are expected due to high order volume. Yeah, that makes sense. That totally makes sense. So $2.50 for a Steam Link if you're interested. Also, Fanatical is having a summer deal or summer sale. So if you're interested in checking that out, you should definitely do so. Some of the games that are on the Steam sale are not included on the Fanatical sale, and vice versa. So it's definitely worth checking out both of them. And if you do purchase on Fanatical, as I said, there is a referral link for TuxDigital.com/Fanatical sale. That will benefit the TuxDigital account. But another thing I want to bring up is that they're doing the Red Hot sale. So if you put in the coupon code RED10, you save an extra 10% on top of the already existing discount that's on their sale. So be sure to check out, to compare the difference between which one's the better price, and if Fanatical is the better price, you can get an even better price with RED10. A new release of Turok Remastered is now available on Linux. So if you have ever played back in the day the Nintendo 64 version of Turok, which is basically like Doom meets Tomb Raider meets Jurassic Park or something. So it's like an exploratory puzzle game that has first-person shooter elements with guns, as also crossbows and things, and just regular bows and arrows and things like that. So where you kill dinosaurs and various different monsters and things. It's a really weird, fun game back in the day. And they've made a remastered version. Yes, that was a dinosaur that had a gun. Anyway, so this is a really cool game back in the day, and I'm kind of glad to see that it's now available on Linux. Now, the reason I think it's really cool that it is available, but as far as like the price, the normal price is $20. And that's a bit much for a game that was made in 1997. But thankfully, it's on the Steam Summer Sale, and $5 is not so bad. So if you're interested in checking it out, this would be a good time to try it for the $5 because that's way better than $20. But anyway, this one has a whole new remastered version. It's kind of weird that they don't call it something like Turok Remastered or anything like that. It's just they just call it Turok, so it's kind of confusing as far as like, is it been updated or not? Has it been updated, I guess? But anyway, so it's been improved by like level design, gameplay's been improved. You can now have custom keyboard and mouse inputs, even gamepad inputs if you want. They've added Steam achievements, OpenGL support for vertical sync, all kinds of new things. And what's also really cool about it is that, based on, really, I don't know exactly if this is the case, but maybe based on the actions, the reactions of the crowd, I guess the purchasing of the community for Turok, they might make Turok 2 available as well, so you might be interested in that. It's also on Summer Sale, but it's only for Windows. And someone asked Ryan Gordon or Iculus, who ported Turok to Linux, if Turok 2 would be coming. He said that he's hoping for that, but that's all he gave for information about it. So maybe it's based on the sales. I don't know. Maybe not. Anyway, if you have any kind of nostalgia for Turok, like I think I might actually buy it for the $5. $20, guaranteed no, but $5, it's possible. Anyway, so Turok on Linux, pretty cool. Up next in the show is you can now play TrackMania Nations Forever via a snap. So this is a arcade style racing game that you can play, and what's really interesting is that it was made in 2008, but you can still play it. And you can even play online now. The servers, even after 10 years, the servers are still up, and you can still play like all the maps and everything. And this is actually kind of cool because the reason why it's included in this episode is because there was this snap. It was made by the snap crafters, where they're combining the Windows game with Wine wrapped inside of the snap. So you can basically, kind of like the Winepak I talked about earlier in the show, the Wine Snap, as this is now being referred to as, allows you to do the same similar thing of having Wine and the game built into a snap. So you don't have to do a lot of to get the game working. And now if you I didn't really describe it previously about why this is important. That's why I think it's really cool, is because the running Wine, you can definitely do that on your system. And there are all things that make it easier, like play on Linux, but wine bottles and things like that allow you to, separate wine from itself. So you could have multiple versions of multiple different things of wine. So you can multiple tweaks and change things up in configurations for different versions of wine so that you can have them working with different applications. But it takes a little bit of effort. Well, it takes a lot of effort to set all that up. Now, if you only have one wine, you basically are limited very much to what you can run with that one version and one configuration. And with wine bottles and Play on Linux, allows you to do multiple versions of wine and multiple configurations, but it's still pretty involved to do it. Now, this is cool because you can just use the snap or the Winepak to install the application with Wine, with the configurations already set up, and just play the game. Now, in this particular case, this particular game has a certain specific license that doesn't allow you to, provide the game with the snap. So they did a clever, cool licensing solution by, when you install the snap, it has an auto-downloading installer thing that when you launch the game, it will start downloading the game and then install it from their stuff without having to be pre-packaged in the snap. So it's still super easy to install and get ready to go. It just doesn't require you to have everything in the snap specifically. So that's a really interesting thing, but when you do install it, it installs it to the snap. It solves like the licensing issue, the configuration issue, the compartmentalizing of wine issue, like all kinds of stuff. It's pretty cool, and it's also a pretty good game. So if you want to check that out, link in the show notes. And I don't know if it's on sale. No, it's a free game. Never mind. Doesn't matter. It's totally on sale for free. So finally, in this episode of This Week in Linux, we're going to talk about something that's not really Linux related, but is pretty important because, it's not fun. So the EU Parliament Legal Affairs Committee has voted on the directive for copyright for reform, which is terrible. Just terrible. So unfortunately, there's multiple things about this that are not good. There are a couple things that are actually good, but it's still not good overall because there's so many things that are just atrocious that it removes anything that's beneficial, like the relevancy of those is just gone. So it seems that SOPA and PIPA and the removal of net neutrality rules and things like that, all the effort that the U.S. government has been trying to do to ruin the internet, the EU decided, hey, us too, don't forget about us. We want to ruin things too. So that's what this is for, I assume, just to ruin things. Because if you look at Article 3, Article 11, Article 13, they are awful. Absolutely terrible. First of all, Article 11 is what's known as the link tax, which essentially says it's anyone using snippets of journalistic content first needs to get a license or pay a fee to the publisher of its use online. So, for example, if you decide to link a Twitter post somewhere in a blog post, you have to pay for the ability to link that Twitter post. It's really ridiculous. Like, it doesn't even take any consideration whatsoever with like public press or freedom of the press or fair use idea concepts, anything like that. It's just absolutely ridiculous. Now, if that wasn't terrible enough, they decided to go, much further and decide now that it's requiring online platforms to monitor their users' uploads and try to prevent copyright infringement through automated filtering. This is atrocious. So platforms that use content generated by users like YouTube and Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn and Google Plus and all these places like Mastodon, Diaspora, all these places are now going to have to deal with monitoring and filtering everything that comes to their servers. Now, some platforms, that's possible. YouTube does it already anyway. Not very well. Actually, it's awful, terrible, but they do it. It's just going to be a catastrophe, really. So if this passes, they technically have voted. The Legal Affairs Committee has voted on it, and they have approved it. But it still has a few more things that it has to get through, and they're basically saying that if you look at the Creative Commons post about this particular topic, they said that there's going to be another vote. Will be on July 4th that will decide to reopen the copyright reform for debate or to push it through. So a lot of places are not, very optimistic about this. This could be awful. Like the GDPR has some benefits to it. So you could argue that, both ways, whether it's good or bad. But in this case, it's just 99% terrible. Or at least the things that are good are vastly outweighed by the things that are terrible. So hopefully this doesn't happen, and they do bring it back into discussion, and they don't do it. But who knows? Hopefully it doesn't happen. But I'll let you know if it does. And probably won't be able to display the screen of the things that I'm talking about if it does happen. So I have to just show a picture, a text or something, or just, I don't know. Anyway. Thanks for watching this episode of This Week in Linux. If you like what I do here on the show, please hit that like button and be sure to subscribe. If you'd like to support the channel, we have multiple ways to contribute via PayPal, Patreon, and others by going to TuxDigital.com/contribute. Or you can order the Linux is Everywhere t-shirt by going to TuxDigital.com/Linux is Everywhere. If you'd like some more podcasting goodness from me, then check out the latest episode of Destination Linux. Just a reminder, this show is recorded live, so if you'd like to join us in the live chat room to discuss the latest Linux good news, then be sure to subscribe and ring that bell so that you get notified when the show goes live. Thanks again for watching. I'm Michael Tennell with TuxDigital, and as always, keep using, learning, and enjoying Linux.